Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and we are going to talk about the Seventh-day Adventists, faulty and fallacious biblical interpretation that we are still bound to the old covenant or the laws, the commandments of God. Now, in speaking to an Adventist, and you tell them that we are under a new covenant, which the Bible clearly says are clearly crystal clear in the New Testament. It's all over the face of it. Even in the Old Covenant, God prophesied that the days will come when he will make a new covenant with the people, and that it will not be like the previous one. Jeremiah 31:31. Hebrews 8:13 clearly states that the old covenant is waxing old and ready to vanish away. What was part of the old covenant? The 10 Commandments. They will try to use fancy tricks and fancy arguing techniques to try to say that the 10 covenants, the 10 covenants, the 10 commandments are not part of the old covenant, blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's just deal with the bottom line. Ignore all their fancy arguing techniques and let's just get to the bottom line where the rubber meets the road. The 10 commandments, which the Sabbath is part of. Okay, the 10 commandments is the old covenant. Commandment 1 through 10, which includes the Sabbath. All of it is part of the old, it's actually is the old covenant. That's what the old covenant was all about, people, was the 10 commandments. Wake up and smell the freaking coffee. Okay, and if you try to argue we are not bound to the old covenant no more and that we are not bound to the law, the most common fallacious argument you will get from a Seventh-day Adventist: do you mean that it's okay to murder now and we can just commit adultery and do all these things since we're not, bound to the law anymore? No. Let me explain for these Bible-dumb people. Okay. Let's explain it in simple layman's terms using a good legal analogy of how contracts work today, because a covenant is basically an agreement, or another synonym, a contract. It is a contract between man and God. God says, these are the rules, this is the way it is, this is the agreement between me and you, this is what you are to abide by. Now a new covenant or new contract has been made between man and God. Okay. Legally speaking, in the world we live in today, when a contract is drawn up, for anyone out there who's been living under a rock, once you agree to that contract, and you being a Christian is your way of saying you agree to God's contract, by the way. But in the world, you sign your signature. Contract's drawn up, you sign it, you agree to it. Okay, you are bound to the rules of that contract. Let's say, in this case, for this analogy, it is a loan. Okay, you get a loan, you sign a contract, this is how much you're going to pay back each month. Anytime you're late, these are going to be the penalties, blah, 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 and other things are put in there. You sign, you agree, okay, a done deal. Let's say 6 months down the road, the bank draws up a new contract, and they tell you, okay, we have drawn up a new contract. You were paying $400 a month back on your loan. In this new agreement, we're going to make your loan $300. So you actually save a little bit. They draw up a new contract. Okay, you sign, you agree to it. Once you sign your signature and you agree to that new contract, now, Adventists, listen to me very carefully. This next question. Listen. When you sign your name to this new contract, I'm just speaking to you personally, Adventists, listening to this. What would you do personally? Would you pay the $300 a month after signing and agreeing to the new contract? Or would you continue to pay the $400 every month and consider yourself still under the old contract, paying $100 more each month than you had to? No, of course not. You would pay only the $300 because you signed a new contract. Now there are new agreements. Okay, phase 2. If anything from the original contract is desired to remain in effect from the one drawing up the contract, if he wants anything from the original to still be in effect in the new contract, he just simply transfers over from the old and into the new anything that he wants to remain in effect. Not only can he transfer things from the old into the new and keep them in effect, but he has the right to alter them if he wishes. But regardless, if he carries anything over or alters them or whatever, you are only bound to what is contained in the new contract. It doesn't matter what. Listen, Adventists. Hey, listen. It doesn't matter what was in the old contract. That is irrelevant. Once you agree to the new contract, that is the one you go by. You no longer go by the old. You cannot, by all rules of logic and common freaking sense, go by both agreements at once. It doesn't happen in the real world. It doesn't happen in the Bible. You have to either bind yourself to one covenant or the next, to one agreement or the next. You can't be bound to a new contract and still be bound to the old original contract. It doesn't work this way. Wake up, people. Okay, did Jesus transfer anything from the old covenant into the new? Yes. Yes, he did. So by the Adventist stupid Bible dumb argument by saying, oh, well, are you saying that we can't, or, that we can murder and we can commit adultery and basically get away with murder and it's okay to sin now? And don't let them get stupid like a child on you because they like to play dumb. No, that's not what this means. Jesus never said that. Jesus did reiterate the commandments. They have been transferred over into the new covenant. He changed them, however. He transferred most of them into the new, and he altered them. Many times we hear Jesus saying in the New Testament, if one has studied it long enough, he'll know exactly which passages I'm referring to. Jesus would always say, you heard it said this, but I say that. He was repeating things from the old covenant law. You heard Moses say, thou shalt not kill. But I say, right then he was altering that commandment. He said, you heard it said from Moses, not from me, Moses, that you shall not kill. But here comes the change. He's altering it. But I say, if you even hate your brother, you are already guilty of murder. The old covenant was about actions. The new covenant is about thoughts. In the old covenant, committing adultery was a no-no. In the new covenant, thinking about it, you're already guilty of the sin. In the old covenant, committing the act of murder was the sin. In the new covenant, thinking about it or hate in your heart, you're already guilty of it. Old covenant was the physical actions. The new covenant starts in the heart. Old covenant actions, new covenant heart. It all starts in the heart with just a thought. You're guilty. Just like that. So actually, Jesus was making it harder to obey the original commands, because now every one of them starts in your heart. With a thought, without any outward action, you're already guilty, just like that. Basically, by doing this, he was laying down how impossible it is for man to make it, and explaining the absolute need for a Savior, because we can't do it. But that's for another subject. The point is, he did put most of the laws back into the new covenant. So as a Christian, when I say we are under the new covenant and no longer the old, to an Adventist, I'm not telling anyone I think we should go kill, or that we have the right to. I'm not telling any Adventist that we have a license to sin. I'm not telling any Adventist that it's okay to, commit adultery, or it's okay to do anything. No, it is not. If you hate your brother, you're guilty of murder. If you think about adultery, you're guilty. None of these things are still okay. Now, Jesus repeated and changed 9 different commands of the 10. There is only one that he completely skipped over, that never got transferred into the new covenant. Which one did he skip over? Which one did not get transferred over? The 4th, the Sabbath. Why? Because the Sabbath is completely different. The Sabbath pointed to Jesus Christ. It was a symbolic rest. It was a shadow, Colossians 2:17. Colossians 2:17 states that the Sabbath, if you read in context with verse 16, and then read through to 17, Colossians 2:16, 17, the Sabbath was a shadow, but Christ is the substance, or Christ is the reality, depending on your translation. A body casts a shadow. The shadow was the Sabbath, and the body casting that shadow was Jesus. Jesus is the substance of what the Sabbath stood for. The Sabbath was a symbolic rest. It was a rest in a 24-hour period. Jesus is now our rest. The old covenant was physical. The new covenant is spiritual. The new covenant, a physical rest. The new covenant, a spiritual rest. Jesus is now our rest, our spiritual rest. He knew this. That's why he never integrated the Sabbath and transferred it over into the new covenant, because he was our rest now, and not a day anymore. It never got transferred over. It is never a command anywhere in the entire New Testament. The command is nowhere in there. Therefore, if you accept Jesus Christ and agree to the new covenant, you are no longer under the Sabbath. You are under the agreement as stated and laid down in the new covenant, not the old, the new. There has been a new one made. The old is automatically void once the new is made. And Hebrews clearly states that. Hebrews 7:12. When there is a change of the priesthood, there is also of necessity a change in the law. It was changed. The church did not transfer the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. We don't think that Sunday is the Sabbath and that we've changed it or altered it. No, Adventists, we don't change the Sabbath, because the old covenant Sabbath was the 7th day. We acknowledge that. It's Saturday. We didn't change it. It was abolished because Christ took it. He took it over. He is now our Sabbath. We rest in him now. It's a spiritual rest. It's a 24-hour-a-day rest every day of the week. we now rest in him.